Alexander Hayes couldn't move. He couldn't open his eyes. He couldn't speak. He couldn't even twitch a finger. But he could hear everything. Every word. Every pause. Every breath. After the crash, doctors called him unconscious, unresponsive, possibly in a locked-in state. But Alexander knew the truth. He was awake. He was trapped, fully aware, and what he heard from the people he trusted most destroyed him. His wife whispering about the will. His son asking about shares and voting control. His daughter fretting over inheritance timelines. They thought he was gone. They thought he wasn't listening. And then, someone unexpected walked in, a quiet woman with soft footsteps. The maid. And what she said when she thought he couldn't hear changed everything. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Alexander Hayes was 62, founder of Hayes Global Industries, a billionaire in the public eye, disciplined, private, powerful, admired by many, feared by some. Married for 34 years to Evelyn, father of 2 adult children, Daniel and Olivia, he lived in a massive gated estate, surrounded by luxury, but emotionally distant. He had been a provider, not a presence. A man who measured love through stability, not conversation. But what no one knew was that Alexander had begun to suspect something long before the crash. Subtle notes of distrust, half-hidden conversations, missing documents, unexplained phone calls, all filed away in his mind like pieces of a puzzle he had not yet completed. He waited. He watched. And he prepared, quietly, for the possibility that those closest to him might not act in his best interest. The night of the crash began at a gala, one of the city's most prestigious charity events. Alexander had delivered a speech, smiled for the cameras, pledged millions to scholarships and local projects. Applause. Recognition. Admiration. But behind the mask, tension with Evelyn lingered. A quiet argument before leaving. A subtle reminder from her that he needed rest. He insisted on driving himself. He had done it before in worse weather. He could handle it. And then the rain fell on the highway, relentless enough that flashing headlights became disorienting. Tires screamed. Metal twisted. Glass shattered. And when the paramedics arrived, they spoke in cautious tones, severe brain trauma. Possibly in a locked-in state. Unresponsive. We won't know until swelling reduces. Evelyn trembled. Daniel immediately asked, if he doesn't wake up, who takes over legally? The words cut deeper than the crash. Deeper than broken bones. Deeper than any bruise or scar. Alexander lay there, trapped, listening, and understood in a way he had never before. The people he trusted might act first for themselves, not him. In the hospital room, day blurred into night, measured only by the dimming of hallway lights and shift changes of nurses. Alexander lay trapped in a listening prison. Evelyn whispered about medical costs, about timelines, about what the hospital staff didn't understand. Daniel negotiated with board members, his voice calm, precise, calculated, discussing succession and share transfers. Olivia fretted, her tone emotional, frustrated about inheritance trust timelines. And he could not move, not respond, not defend himself. Be honest, if you heard your own family planning your life without you, what would you do? Would you feel anger, betrayal, despair? Would you silently bear it, trapped in your own body, unable to speak? Then Grace Carter arrived. 52 years old, night shift caregiver, soft voice, steady presence. She did not treat him like a body. She treated him like a person. Mr. Hayes, she whispered the first night, I don't know if you can hear me, but I believe people feel more than doctors think. She adjusted his blanket, smoothing it across his chest as though dignity still mattered. She prayed quietly in the corner of the room, offering a simple, humble hope, not for herself but for him. She spoke of her father, misdiagnosed, unconscious, yet fully aware, and how the family had failed him. Alexander remembered moments he had failed to be present with Olivia and Daniel, tiny moments, a missed recital, a skipped birthday dinner, a lesson never taught. And he understood, in the prison of his body, that those moments had left marks, not on his children, but on himself. 2 nights later, Grace overheard something she was never meant to hear. Evelyn and Daniel, voices low in the hallway, discussing amending trust documents, selling shares quietly, moving Alexander to long-term care without public notice. And then, words that struck her like lightning: if he never wakes up, this is cleaner. Cleaner. The word hung in the air. Alexander's mind burned. They were not cruel, not vindictive, not celebratory of his absence, they were strategic. Calculated. Fearful. They were protecting what he had taught them to value: wealth, control, stability. Not life, not presence, not connection. Grace returned to his side, leaning close, speaking softly. "If you can hear me, Mr. Hayes, it's not too late." Her voice carried warmth. She did not need a reaction. She simply spoke the truth. A tear formed on the corner of Alexander's eye, unbidden. The machines responded subtly, a slight change in the rhythm of his heart rate. The first neurological signs in days. A flicker of hope. Weeks passed. Small twitches. Finger movements during Grace's voice. Subtle, fleeting, yet unmistakable. New scans were ordered. Doctors observed increased cortical activity. The family remained unaware, believing him gone, planning the future without him, unaware of the storm brewing silently behind his eyelids. Late one afternoon, as sunlight streaked through the blinds, Alexander, focusing with every ounce of awareness, squeezed Grace's hand. The room froze. Evelyn gasped. Daniel stepped back. And slowly, almost painfully, he opened his eyes. Shapes. Shadows. Faces. The first person he looked at was not his wife, not his children, but Grace. The woman who treated him as present when the world had begun reorganizing around his absence. His recognition of her was immediate, instinctive. She squeezed his hand in response, tears forming in her eyes, steadying him, showing him that someone saw him, truly saw him. That day, the listening prisoner became awake, aware, alive. Weeks later, Alexander began quietly reclaiming control. He did not shout. He did not expose. He did not confront. He revised his will, restructuring inheritance not to punish, but to ensure responsibility and stewardship. He restructured company voting power, placing authority in an ethical trust with independent oversight. He established a medical ethics foundation in the name of Grace's father, supporting advocacy for patients in non-responsive states. Grace tried to refuse recognition. Alexander said softly, "You reminded me what integrity sounds like." He did not scream at his family. He did not expose them publicly. He simply removed power quietly, measured, controlled, wise. Months later, Alexander returned to the hospital wing, observing Grace lead the patient advocacy program she inspired. "Sometimes the people paid to care more than the people who were supposed to love us," he whispered. What do you think hurt him more, the accident, or the truth he heard in that hospital room? If loyalty matters more than money to you, type loyalty in the comments. Even as the narrative of his family unfolded around him, Alexander found calm in silence. He reflected on Evelyn's exhaustion, Daniel's urgency, Olivia's frustration. He realized that their words had not been malice, they were the natural result of fear, expectation, and a world he had taught them to navigate without him. His anger softened into clarity, and then into action. He measured every choice, every word, every directive, turning power into wisdom. The company, the estate, the legacy, everything became a reflection of principles rather than impulsive desire. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. He spent months reclaiming connection with his children, not by force, not by resentment, but through presence and intentional conversation. Conversations that had once been absent, now deliberate, measured. With Olivia, he spoke about guidance, mentorship, and responsibility. With Daniel, he spoke about stewardship and conscience. With Evelyn, he spoke about patience, love, and understanding. Grace remained his anchor, his quiet reminder that integrity and care are sometimes louder than money or control. In the quiet of his private estate, Alexander reflected on his own life, the years he had spent building wealth and stability at the expense of connection. The listening prison had taught him more than any boardroom ever could. That life is fragile. That awareness is precious. That loyalty cannot be bought, only earned. Months later, Alexander walked through the hospital wing again. Patients were monitored, families hovered, caregivers moved efficiently. Grace moved among them, guiding, teaching, advocating, quietly transforming lives the way she had transformed his. Alexander stopped at a doorway, watching her lead, confident, composed, respected. He understood the irony. He had been trapped in a body that couldn't move, but in that stillness, he had learned to see movement in truth, in character, in human care. Sometimes the people paid to care more than the people who were supposed to love us, he said softly, almost to himself. He paused. What do you think hurt him more, the accident, or the truth he heard in that hospital room? If this story moved you, hit the like button. It helps us bring more powerful stories like this to light. And subscribe if you believe character is revealed in silence.